Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to make feijoada, which is the national dish of my country, Brazil. And it's a very good, hearty black bean stew that's perfect to make in the winter. And this dish is traditionally served with rice, collard greens, farofa, which is a toasted cassava topping, and a vibrant Brazilian vinaigrette. So I'm going to show you how to make all of this today. I already have my beans here already soaked and drained. You cannot make this with canned beans. The whole beauty of this dish is that it cooks all day in the stove, and we usually make this on the weekend for family or guests, so it's a big party kind of thing dish. And I'm going to use a variety of meats. This dish traditionally was made to use all the odds and ends of everything that you had around. So yeah, usually there is a smoked meat component, a salted meat component. It's usually made with beef and pork, but the meats can change. And the traditional one, the one that started all, you also add the pig feet and pig ears, which are very, very rich in collagen and makes this stew very hearty and delicious. But those are hard to find, and I couldn't find those here. So I'm just making with the meats that I could find around. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. This is just a humble dish to use whatever you had in hand, things that were preserved and smoked and salted. The most important thing is just to have a variety of it when you're cooking the beans. So today I'm using a Brazilian smoked sausage called linguiça defumada. But if you can't find that, any kind of smoked sausage is fine. I also have some smoked pork ribs, which you can use regular ribs too. I usually like to use something that has bones on it, so adds some more body to the stew too. And here I have some dried meat, which we call carne seca in Portuguese. And this one is salted, or was salted. We usually go through a process of taking the salt off before we're cooking it, so I have it soaking for 24 hours in the fridge. And when we do that, we just have to make sure we change the water a couple times, because usually when the meat's releasing the salt, the water can get saturated, let's say, and you stop pulling the salt out. So it's important that you actually change the water a few times when you're trying to do this process. I like to make mine with dried meat, especially with carne seca, because I'm from the Northeast. These dried meats are very popular in the region that I'm from in Brazil. So if I can find it, I'll always add it. But to be 100% honest with you, I have made this with only smoked sausage and bacon. It won't be traditional, but it'll still turn into a very good stew. The first step is actually to prepare the meats, and I'm going to boil this dried meat and this smoked ribs in a large pot back there. Then we're going to drain the water and use that same pot to do the whole dish, because this dish is a one pot meal. You have to drain the water because it's going to be very salty. I'm going to add the meat to this pot and then fill it with water. And I'm only adding the dried beef and the smoked pork ribs to here because they have been previously salted too. And we're just going to add enough water to cover them. Do not need to add the sausage. We're going to add that later in the cooking. Okay, now let's just move this to the stove and we'll cook it for 10 minutes after it starts boiling. So I'm going to turn it on, put the lid on, and then once it starts boiling, then I'm going to count 10 minutes. So while that's going, we're going to start dicing our vegetables. And for this amount of beans, which is about 1 pound, I'm going to use 2 onions. Okay, our onions are ready, and I already have some minced garlic here. I sometimes buy garlic in bulk, and I just peel them all, put them all in the food processor, and then freeze it in portions, so it's easy for me to take it out of the freezer and cook, especially in the winter, which I make a lot of stews and soups and stuff like that, and this is perfect for that. This is about a tablespoon of garlic, and for spices, we usually do cumin and bay leaves. I like to use whole cumin and then toast and grind. I always try to toast your spices before you cook, because that will also help releasing lots of the oils and aromatics of it, and you can taste a lot more of it in your food. I find also that when you buy ground spices, sometimes they tend to lose the flavor very fast, so I really just buy it whole when I can, like cumin seeds or coriander seeds, etc. So I'm going to use about a teaspoon here. If you don't like cumin that much, you don't need to use as much. You can do half a teaspoon, quarter teaspoon. I love cumin. It makes me think of home, so I'm going to put 1 teaspoon here. And we're going to toast it real quick on a dry pan for about 2 to 3 minutes, or until it's fragrant. Our meats are almost coming to a boil. Now I'm going to open this sausage, and I'm only using 2 today because I also want to make another Brazilian dish. Actually, it's a Portuguese soup that we also eat traditionally in Brazil, which is called caldo verde. So it's a potato, collard green, and sausage soup. And I love having that in the winter too, so I'm going to save 2 of those sausages so I can make that another day this week. Then I'm not going to cut this. We are going to cook it whole when it's time to put in there, and we're going to cut it towards the end, because if you cut now, if you've been to Brazil and ate feijoada, you probably notice sometimes the sausage turns all black, and I like to see the pinkish of the sausage on mine, so I cook it whole, and then at the end I slice it, and you can see the beautiful color when you're setting up and eating the dish. So that's why we're going to do that. Okay, our cumin is ready. Smells wonderful, and I'm going to add it to the mortar and pesto, and we're just gonna grind it. Here's how mine looks. It's all ready to go in the pot once we put the other ingredients in. Okay, it's been 10 minutes and we are going to now drain this water. And I'm going to bring everything else to the side so it's easier for us to get things going. So I'm going to add our fat first. Then we're gonna add the onions. I'm going to add the garlic. Saute this for a little bit, maybe a minute or two. We are also going to add the cumin. And adding the cumin now at this stage helps with blooming it, so will make it more flavorful, because spices have a compound that's enhanced by oil. So we're going to add the cumin right in the pot, and that's going to make it smell really good too. Oh no, I just realized everything was not fuming, guys. I'm sorry. I have added the meat, hopefully you saw the cumin, and the beans to the pot. And now I'm going to cover it with hot water. This is 1 quart. You're gonna probably need to add more. Yep, a little bit more. And this is going to cook for a while, so you want to make sure everything is nicely covered. So that was 6 cups, I think 8 cups. It's a good measure. Okay, and I'm going to add the bay leaves now. Couple bay leaves, maybe 3. Mine are very dry and small. If you have 2 big ones, just 2 should be fine. Okay, so we're going to let our beans cook there first for about an hour, 2 hours, until they start getting soft. And then I'm going to add the sausage. If I add the sausage now, it's going to just disappear in there, because if you cook for so long, it would just kind of fall apart. The same thing can happen with the ribs, but I'm okay with that. I like to get some smoky flavor going on in there through the whole time. That's why I wanted the ribs to be in the pot there too, together with the salted beef. And we're going to leave the lid off, no lid on the pot, because we wanted the broth to kind of thicken while it cooks. A really good feijoada has a very nice and thick broth. So we're gonna wait a little bit on there, and I will come back in a couple hours to show you guys the rest of the process. Okay, so it has been about 2 hours now, and it has reduced. The meats are still not falling apart, but now it's the time to add the smoked sausage. I'm going to add them whole here, and then we're going to slice later. You can cook it already sliced, definitely. I just really think that the color turns a lot better when we do that. So now we're going to put in here and let cook for maybe another hour, or until the beans start to soften. And then I'm going to come back and start making the sides. All right, I'm back. The beans have been cooking for a little while now, and it is now time to start on our sides. While I was waiting, I already diced some onions, and we're going to start with our rice first. I'm going to use brown rice today, but usually feijoada is served with white rice in Brazil, but it's fine, your choice. You can pick which one you like best. I'm going to cook 2 cups of it, and we make it in a little bit of a different way in Brazil too. We first sauteed some onions and garlic, and then add the rice and add the water. So I'm going to make like that today too. But obviously, if you don't want to go to the trouble, we can also use a rice cooker. So We're going to start by adding some olive oil to our pan. And the pan is already hot, so I'm going to put some onions. I usually don't measure this, but we can say about a half a cup or cup. What do you like? Everybody makes rice different in Brazil, but we're gonna saute these onions for a little bit. Then we're going to add the garlic and the rice. Meanwhile, while this saute, I'm going to just rinse this brown rice real quick. Okay, after about 2 minutes, we're going to add the garlic. I'm using half of this because I also want to use this for the farofa. So I'd say maybe half a tablespoon or a couple cloves of garlic. Get them nice, and then we don't want it to make it too brown, but we want it to cook a little bit to release some of the flavors. Smells really good right now. Again, I love the smell of onions and garlic sauteing together. Alright, now we're gonna add our rinsed rice, and I'm going to just saute a little more. Make sure all the rice is coated with the oil. So we're now going to add 4 cups of water, just a little pinch of salt. If I was making white rice, I would put less water, but you can just follow the package instructions. Okay, just a little bit of salt, not too much, because our feijoada might be a little on the salty side because of the meats. So we're just going to now wait for this to come to a boil, put a lid, and let it simmer until it's done. And now that the rice is cooking, we're going to work on our Brazilian vinaigrette. I'm going to use the onions that I have already cut, but we also are going to need tomatoes. I'm gonna do 1 tomato today, not making a large quantity because this is better eaten fresh, doesn't last very well in the fridge, so just make the amount you're gonna eat at the day. So I'm just going to slice these tomatoes real quick. And we're just gonna cut about the same size we cut the onions before. I have an aunt that's very particular about this, and she likes hers very tiny, cut very small. I prefer a little bigger, to be honest, so you can kind of, you know, see what you're eating. So I'm going to cut mine the way I like to eat it. And 1 tomato should be plenty. Usually you do like half the amount of the onions for the amount of tomatoes that you have, if you don't want the onions to be too strong. Some people don't like raw onions. I really don't mind eating them, so I sometimes put 1 to 1. You know, these recipes from Brazil, it's not like meant to be. A lot of people there don't cook from recipes, at least for my family or people around me. We all learn how to cook from other people, and many times it's by taste. So I encourage you to just do the same and try to adapt to cook however you like. Something like this especially is very easy to do by taste. But we can start first with the guideline of doing half of this amount for onions. Our rice has started to boil back there, so I'm just going to add the lid and reduce the fire to simmer. So put the tomatoes here in a bowl. This is also good to, it doesn't last very well for a long time, but it's good to kind of sit for about 30 minutes because we're gonna use vinegar in this, and that's going to make it kind of pickle it a bit. So for this amount of tomatoes, I'm gonna put just a little bit onions, like 2-to-1 ratio, let's say, kind of like this. And the next ingredient here is cilantro, which is beloved and hated by some people. I'm from the northeast of Brazil, and we eat lots of cilantro in the northeast. In the southeast, it's more commonly to make this with parsley, so you can do whatever suits your taste better. I'm going to use cilantro because I love cilantro. Some people add some green onions too. I don't have any green onions today. There's plenty of regular onions in there, so just the cilantro is fine. Alright, I'm gonna put it in here. And we also season to taste, but I will start with like a tablespoon of vinegar. Don't need to put that much. I do like mine a little pickly, maybe half a tablespoon. Then I'll taste it. Just regular white vinegar, some salt, it's just a pinch, and you will adjust after you taste it and see how it tastes like. We're going to mix this, and the tomatoes are going to release some water too after you put the salt and the vinegar. Then after it's nice and mixed, we're just gonna add a drizzle of olive oil. Or maybe half, like a tablespoon. I like mine with a good amount of olive oil. Then the taste to see if you like it. Then it's perfect. Doesn't need any more salt or vinegar. It's really good. So our vinaigrette is ready. Now we're going to move on to the collard greens. I'm going to make the farofa last, the one that uses this, farinha de mandioca, which is the traditional manioc flour from Brazil, because that's really hard to find here in the US. So that can be an optional type dish. So we're gonna start with the collard greens first, and I'm not gonna use all of these collard greens. I also wanna use it for another recipe this week. All right, so first with the collard greens, we're going to remove the stem. I like to just do it like kale, just pull the stems and push it down. And if I'm making soups and stuff, I don't throw away the stems, I'll just cut it very small and add to the soup, or if I'm making side dish, saute it. But today, keeping traditional, I'm not gonna use it. I'm just gonna put this in the compost. And then when you have your collard greens, the stemmed, very important that you cut them very, very thin. A lot of people are very particular about this in Brazil with the collard greens. And the best way to do this is just to roll the whole thing up. Then you're going to start from the bottom here. This in classic French cooking, the way I learned in culinary school, is called the chiffonade. But you just say cutting very thin in Brazil. So we just roll it, and you try our best to cut as thin as we can. So people will judge you at a family gathering in Brazil on how thin you can cut the collard greens. So I had an aunt that her mom was famous for making a really good one, so she always had to come. She was always responsible for the collard greens for the family. I was not very good at it in Brazil. I never really had to do it, but once I started culinary school and worked in restaurants, I got lots of practice. So they all ask me to cut their collard greens now when I go back home. Here you go. Let's put this in a little bowl too, and I'll cook it together when I go cook the farofa. Okay, so you can have this raw, or you can saute it in garlic. I myself particularly like it raw because the feijoada is kind of heavy, so I love having something fresh and crunchy to munch in. But today I'll saute it so I can show you how to do it. So let's move all of this to the other side. We're ready to start doing some more cooking. Start by adding some olive oil first. The oil is hot, so just adding the garlic here to the pan. Add the greens. And we're going to cook this very barely. Just want it to saute, get some flavors, and then you turn it off, because you don't want this to turn brown. We like to eat it while it's bright green. So we're just going to quickly saute. I'm using my hand to hold the camera here, but I'm just going to add some salt and turn it off. That's it. Super fast. For the farofa, very simple too. Just gonna get olive oil, garlic, onion, a little bit of the cassava flour, and finish it with butter. I'm going to add a little bit of salt at this stage too to help the onions release moisture again. And farofa does need a good amount of salt because this one doesn't have a very strong taste, so it's important that you season well. So I like to layer the seasoning, the flavor. So we first start with the onions, and I'll adjust again at the end once I taste it. But you can cook these onions a little farther too. You can even make them slightly caramelized. But for today, I'm just gonna cook them until they're translucent, and then we're going to add the garlic. And then at this stage, you add the butter when the garlic is starting to get brown. You don't want to add it too early because you don't want the butter to burn. So we're just gonna melt it. Then we're gonna add the farofa. And that's it. The farinha, sorry. And that's it. For this amount of onions and butter, maybe a cup of cutting in is good. So usually we start adding little and then add more. If it needs, you can always add more, but you can't really take it out. I like mine a bit more on the wet side, I would say, more moist, not too dry. And some people have it, they're really dry in Brazil too. So also personal preference, but I'll show you how to make the way I like it today. Also, some people don't put onions. I think onions are essential. We always put onions in my family too, and I really, really like it. There you go, I think it's ready. Maybe just a little bit more. Maybe there was, yeah, a full cup. Okay, and you don't want to burn this. I'm going to turn it off. You want to slightly toast it, but you don't want it to get brown or have any bitterness. I like when it's very nice and fluffy like this. And I'm going to taste for salt now, and we're good. Needs a little more. Now you have to make sure you mix it very well so it doesn't stay like one clump of salt in one place. Alright, so we have our farofa. We have our rice. That's going to take a little longer because it's brown rice. We have our collard greens, which you call couve in Portuguese. And we have our feijoada. And now while we're waiting for the rice to cook, I'm going to go ahead and slice these meats and put it right back in so it looks more like the traditional Brazilian bean stew. Sometimes when you go to Brazilian restaurants, they'll take all of the meat to the side and serve it on the side of the feijoada, but if you're doing this at home, we always eat it together with the beans. So I'm going to cut this. I like to add a little plastic thing to cut meat on this cutting board so it just doesn't stain it. Oh, it's beautiful. Falling apart now. And I'm going to remove the bone because it's already fully cooked and we don't need to have that in the beans anymore. Just put in this so you can pick your own meat when you are serving yourself. I'll leave them a little bit because you can see what it is. Don't have to cut super small. We just cut into some chunks. Is this a bone on this one? No bone. There was a little sinew in there. Last rib, then we're gonna move on to the sausages. You see how the ribs are dark, are black? That's why I didn't want to slice the sausage first also and put in there, because sometimes it just get all black too. I've had many feijoadas where the sausage all turned black, so I like to see some of the meat, you know, when I'm already eating a black bean stew. So it's nice to have some color in there. I think it makes it a bit more appetizing. I mean, the thing's delicious anyway, but just a personal preference. So here we go. Ended up with lots of ribs in here, and I'm going to cut the linguiça now, or the sausage. And we always kind of cut on the bias when we're cutting it for feijoada or for churrasco, which is our barbecue. So we're gonna cut it like that. It's very tender. Have to cut carefully so it doesn't break apart. Okay, ooh, here it is, a steaming hot bowl of delicious slow cooked meats that are going to go right back in the pot now. Look at that. Now it looks appetizing, doesn't it? I love this dish so much. Maybe not the healthiest, some people say, but once in a while. It's a very good crowd pleasing dish too. So let's just check on our rice. Going to grab myself a plate. First we're going to add some rice. My brown rice got slightly overcooked. That's alright. Then we're gonna serve some of our beans. I'm gonna pick it with all kinds of meats that comes from there. Here we go. I got one of each, that's great. I want a little bit more beans. There's a lot of meat in there. Okay, and going to add the collard greens. Just going to add a little bit here from the side for color. The Brazilian vinaigrette. And I'm gonna add a little bit of the cassava flour. Here we go. A traditional Brazilian meal that I ate many times growing up. So I am very excited to have this one. Let me grab a fork and taste it all together. I did taste the feijoada while I was cleaning up. Everything was good with the seasoning. I did not need to add any more salt. It was good just as is, and the rice could have cooked a little less, but that's all right. But here it is. I'm gonna taste it together. So I got a little bit of rice and beans. I'm gonna eat without the meat first, but I like to get a little farofa, a little vinaigrette. That's really good. I've made this many times, but this is especially better when I'm eating here in the US, outside of my country. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and please let me know if you have any questions in the comment section down below. And if you make it, let me know how it turns out as well. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.